Okay, I'm gonna be filming a semi-short tutorial for the Believe Tier tray set. I've already painted most of my pieces because once I show you the technique, it's gonna be the same all across the board. But after going through this, if you still have questions, please reach out to me. I'm always more than happy to film more in depth. I can do from start to end if that's what you prefer, but I wanted to just give you a quick tips and tricks tutorial to get you started. So when I do my tier tray kits, the easiest way for me, if you prefer to go piece by piece, that's totally fine. I like to go color by color. That way I don't have to wrap up my wedges and worry about them drying out. So for this one, there are only 3 colors, which is really nice. There's brown, white, and red. So in the brown pile, which I'll talk about in a minute, we have the reindeer snout, the reindeer antlers, the reindeer face, the Christmas tree background, 2 of the snowflakes, and then this rectangle piece. In the white, we have both pairs of ice skates, the caution border, flight path, the sled, the tag, 2 snowflakes, the final 2, and then these pieces go with that Christmas tree background. Oh, and then don't forget this shiplap Believe background, which I left unpainted because that's what I'm gonna show you the technique on. And then in your red pile, you have the Believe with the mini snowflake that goes in there. You have this Rudolph nose, this Rudolph nose with the cutout, the sleigh top with the handle, and Christmas. So the first thing I'm going to show you is the brown technique. I wasn't thinking when I went through and hurried and did it on these pieces. So I have another piece of wood that I'm going to show you the technique on. As you can see, these are completely different looks and it's all based on the technique. So the stained look is using the baby wipe. And then the opaque, the darker one is using your wedge. So to do the stained look, you're gonna get your baby wipe out of the baggie I sent it in. Now, if you don't get to your kit in a while, or maybe when it was being mailed, it dried out, then if you have a water bottle, you can just kind of spritz it, or I usually just run my hand underneath water and then like lightly squeeze it just to add some moisture back in. You don't want it sopping wet, but if it's dry, it's not going to work the way that it's intended. So I wrap, oh, I should have said at the very beginning, you're going to need some kind of cardboard or something when you dab your paint. I always just say the box that your kits came in, just go ahead and open that up or tear off a piece of it, whatever is easiest for you. So your brown obviously came in a container, but I'm just gonna dip a little bit out. So you're going to take, I usually work with a corner, wrap it around 2 of your fingers like that. Then I lightly dip into the brown paint and then I kind of rub off most of it onto the side just because I don't want to get a whole bunch. And then I see which way the grain is going on the wood, and this one is actually going this way. And so then I work quickly, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And I just stain it. So the reason why I'm working quickly is because I'm going to come back. Now it kind of looks streaky, so I'm going to use a clean edge of my wipe. And while the paint is still wet, I'm going to go over and wipe it off. And that evens it out, but it also lightens it up. So let's say you let this completely dry and you're like, you know what, I actually want it to be even darker. Let it dry from the wet wipe and then go ahead and do another coat of that stain and it will just layer it on. So that's the stained look. So you're gonna wanna do that with most of the pieces. The reindeer face, I used the wedge technique because I wanted it to have a difference when you put his snout and his antlers on. I didn't want it to be all one color. And so that's why, if you can see the difference, that's why I did the differing technique. So with the reindeer face also, you know that, I mean, you could paint the whole piece, it's totally fine. I didn't because most of it is going to be covered by his snout. So that's why he looks the way that he does. Okay, if you have any questions on the wipe technique, let me know. But that is fairly simple. Now the wedge technique. I chose this piece because it also has the shiplap lines. So you're gonna want to get your toothpick handy. And I'm going to get, where did I put my, oh, there's my white paint. Okay. And get a wedge. Just got that all over my fingers. Okay, so to use these wedges, you are going to dip your wedge into that white paint, and then you are going to dab most of your paint off onto the side of your box. The reason you're dabbing it off is because if you get a whole bunch of paint onto your wedge and you immediately go on, it's gonna look splotchy, but then you're also gonna completely fill your shiplap lines. If you do this really light technique, like I am not dabbing hard at all, then as you can see, my shiplap lines are staying clear, they're staying dark. If you don't care about that, then you can go ahead and paint however you would like. This technique also, it leaves your edges dark. It's not going to drip paint down the sides. It's just gonna leave a cleaner look for you. And just be patient. You will almost always need 2 coats of paint. And so put on some Netflix or an audiobook or a podcast. And I just hope that this is like a relaxing activity for you. Okay, I'm going to show you, once I get towards the end, I'm going to put some paint into the shiplap line so I can show you if you happen to get paint in, it's really easy to clean that out. But first I want to finish most of it. Okay, so for instance, I'm just gonna dab hard. Okay, so as you can see, I got some paint in the shiplap lines over here. If that's going to bother you, all you need to do is get your toothpick, and while the paint is still wet, drag it through those lines, and it's going to clear it right out. And keep those lines looking nice and dark. I'm not gonna touch that because it's wet. So that is the wedge technique. On smaller pieces, such as this little Rudolph nose, I'm just setting this aside so it can dry, or, oh, this snowflake. It's so small. I send you with blue tweezers. If you have like a craft box or a craft drawer, just keep those. The first one I send is complimentary. So just go ahead and keep those if you plan on ordering more kits. And because they can be used over and over. I have these sharper tweezers to peel off the 3M, and I will explain that a little bit later. But you don't want to squeeze too hard because especially with these little delicate pieces, you don't want to break the edges like this, like these cutouts, for instance, they can be kind of fragile. And so you don't want to squeeze and then crush them. So it just takes a really, really light touch, and all the tweezers do is it kind of helps hold it down, because if you're dabbing it with paint, it's just gonna lift with your wedge. So just barely holding it with the tweezers will help. Plus if you squeeze too hard, it will shoot your piece across the room, and you don't want that. So barely hold and dab. Now, because I did such a light coat, my piece is already almost dry. So if your piece looks really rough, because sometimes when you put paint on wood, it will raise the grain, you can just take a piece of sandpaper and very, very lightly, I'm not even pressing down, I am just very lightly going over the top. And all that does is it just shaves off that very top layer of wood grain that comes up. If you press down, you're gonna actually pull paint up and undo what you just did. So then the same thing, you dip into the paint, dab off onto the side, and do that final coat. 1 or 2 coats is almost always enough. If your coats happen to be super, super light and you need to do a 3rd one, that's okay too. But usually 2 coats is plenty. Okay, I'm going to finish painting this. I'm gonna press pause so that you don't have to watch me finish painting this. But there are a couple of things I wanted to note. For instance, with these little pieces, or I should say especially with something like this, or even this piece. After you paint that first coat, if you want to sand yours, I did a survey a little bit ago and most people don't sand them, but if you do, you want to be extra, extra delicate. This is another example, because if you press down with your sandpaper and you just start going to town, this is going to snap in half, 100%. So you just want to be really gentle and go maybe one way. Don't press down, just very lightly sand over the top. These snowflakes are really delicate, so same thing. Just very, very gently, no pressure, go over the top of that. And then things like this, these pieces, since they're small, how I usually sand them is I would do 1 coat, then I would flip it over and just very lightly, just go one way, just scooch it over, and that's enough to take that grain off. I would lay this down and then just scooch across, and then that should smooth out that grain that raised up. So I am going to finish painting this, and then I will unpause and we will put every piece together so that you will know where each little piece goes and you shouldn't have any questions for that. The final painting technique that I'm gonna show you is once your tag is dry, make sure that it's completely dry. If you like in the pictures, I had polka dotted this background with red. This is the tag for the reindeer. So if you wanna do the polka dots, if you do a lot of crafts, I'm gonna use tools that make it easier, but obviously I have to send you things that are cost effective and you can dispose of them. So if you do a lot of crafts, I actually have this dotting tool, and you can see how it has like the bulb on the end, different sizes. And so it's really easy to just dip in the paint and then dot. So if you do a lot of crafts and you want to know where I get something, then you can just go ahead and comment, and I am happy to show you where to buy them. But for this purpose, I sent you with this toothpick to clear out your shiplap lines, but the back is flat, and that's what we're going to use to dot. So all you're going to do is dip it in that red paint and dot. Dip and dot. Just back and forth. Now, if you want to make your dots look haphazard, but also even in a way, on something this small, I am dividing my tag into I cut it in thirds, so I go down each side and then down the middle, And as you can see, I am dotting fairly evenly. So I'm going straight across. This side doesn't really matter because it is covered by the reindeer, but I wanted to show you what I mean. Then I'm gonna go in between each one and go in between the dots, if that makes sense. What this helps is it's going to look like haphazard, but at the same time, you're not gonna have a cluster of dots that are right next to each other, and then some that are completely spread out. So that's just like a quick trick for you. So I am going to set this aside to dry. Sometimes these dots take a little bit longer to dry just because it's a mound of paint. So I'm going to show you how to put the tag together very last. The most important thing once you get to the finishing stage is make sure everything is completely dry. If, for instance, if this background was wet at all and I tried to stick my pieces on top, it's just going to get the wet paint onto the adhesive and it's just gonna lift the paint off because it didn't stick to the actual wood. So this rectangle piece, to put this together, we need the caution border, the flight path, and the reindeer nose with the cutout. So with my kits, I used to send super glue, and that's how we did my kits for, gosh, over a year. If you're an OG member, you'll remember the super glue days. I mean, it's quick, it's easy. 90% of people were absolutely fine with it. However, I knew there was a better way. So I cut the sticky pieces with this adhesive on the back. So if you do a lot of kits, you can always use your fingernail, but a while ago I linked these sharper scissors. They just have an edge that makes it easier. My tweezers are very well loved, covered in paint and everything. So it just makes it easier to peel. So in order to stick it, you are just going to run underneath that adhesive and peel off every piece of it. And this adhesive is a permanent adhesive, as long as it is used correctly. So placed on a dry surface and pressed down firmly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it down, and I'm not going to press. I'm going to set it down and then I'm going to look at it. Sorry, I need to look at it straight so that I can make sure my borders are even. And then once I'm happy with the placement, all I do is press down firmly, and that is stuck. Now, before you press down firmly, make sure you're happy with where it goes, because if you try to pull it up, you are going to just break your piece. And then we'll peel off on that nose. Put that in there. Cut out, and then this flight path, we're just gonna not squeeze. That's something that I have done many times. I have held pieces like this, and without thinking, I've squeezed, and then they snap right in half. So just be really, really gentle. These tier tray pieces, since they're smaller for your trays, these littler details are very dainty. And then I'm not going to press down, so I can kind of make sure I'm happy with the placement on that. And then press. And then that is one piece down. Now let's do the Christmas tree. So I need all of these pieces. 3, 4, and the Christmas. Okay, I'm gonna do Christmas first. Same thing, although this piece is bigger than like Flight Path, it is more spread out, so it's still very fragile. So just be really careful when you're holding it so you don't squeeze it too hard. Then you just use the etching as a guide. Make sure it's all covered. I always have to pick it up and double check because I am at an angle, and if I put my head down, like I normally paint, my head is right over it. It will block the video. Okay, I like to lay my pieces, especially when there's pieces that are very similar. I like to lay them out before I peel the adhesive off, so I make sure I know where they go, where they fit, what looks good. Okay, I think that looks good. So I'm going to peel one off at a time. These two smaller pieces right here, it doesn't really matter, but this end is slightly thicker than this end. So you can kind of see that with the etching, how it gets thick and then goes skinny. So just be aware of that. I want to make sure all of that etching is covered. Okay, hopefully my head is not blocking you. I usually start on one end and then lay it down. And as long as you don't press, you should be able to move it around at least for a little bit, just to make sure that it's evenly placed. And if you are an old pro at this and you just need help with the tag, go ahead and just fast forward. Towards the end. Okay, so that piece is finished. Let's do, I wanted to give this as much time. It looks like, oh, my tag is almost dry. See, one little bit of wet paint. Let's do our sleigh. Okay, so for this piece, we need the two skates, the sleigh top handle, and the sleigh bottom. So we're going to pull the adhesive off of the sleigh first. Sometimes it's like when scissors with wrapping paper. Sometimes the heavens collide and it just comes off so smooth, and sometimes you have to fight it and get every single little piece off. Okay, so I'm going to put this approximately right here, and I'm going to look and make sure that my sides are even. If you don't care about this, then you just press it down wherever you want. But I like to make sure that the sides are even so it looks nice. And then the handle just goes right here. You don't want to cover up this hole because we are going to be using that. By the way, this serves double purpose because there's two holes here. So if you wanted, depending on the theme of your Christmas tree, you could hang a piece of twine and use this as an ornament. Okay, so for the skates, I sent you with this cute red yarn for I mean, the yarn isn't cute, but it's gonna look cute on this. What you're gonna wanna do is get a small piece of Scotch tape. That was really small, actually. I don't think that will work. You're gonna want a small piece of Scotch tape because it's gonna make your life easier, and you're just gonna wrap it around. Try to make it as skinny as possible. You're gonna wrap it around the end of the yarn. To make threading it through easier. Just squishing it down so it can make it through those teeny tiny holes. Okay, and then I'm going to go through the back of one of these holes. And I think I might have to do this a couple times. I think I went through the back of one and the front of the other. I think that's the way I like how it laid best. Yes. Okay, sorry, I got a phone call and it kicked me off the video. So I'm trying to think. I threaded this through. Then, in order to attach it to your sleigh or sled, you're gonna want one more tiny piece of Scotch tape, and I just put these two together. And go through that very top hole. Oh, I didn't make my Scotch tape skinny enough. Just gonna twist it and go through that top hole. And then I kind of see how low, there's no right or wrong answer. Just see where you want those skates to be. I'm gonna kind of untwist my yarn here to see how you want those skates to lay. I'm gonna put mine probably about right there is fine. I got my yarn completely twisted up. What did I do? There we go. That's better. Okay. Then you can either leave this so it's dangling down, or if you know for a fact, like this is where I want this to be, then you can go ahead. Either way is fine. There's no right or wrong. But if you want to make it like permanently there, then you can just trim and tie this into a knot. I'm not gonna pull up. You wanna be really careful so that you're not tightening it so much that your skates then come back up. And then I'll trim these off. There we go. So that, I keep tangling these, oh my gosh. Okay, so that is your cute little sleigh. Then let's go to our Believe. So this one, let's see if it's gonna come off nice for me or not. It is not. Oh, that wasn't bad. That was actually pretty good. Okay, so then I'm going to just make sure before I press down, so I'm kind of hovering it above. I need to lift it up so I can see. I just want even as I can around the borders. And you can use the shiplap lines for guidance. And then I'm gonna press down. Then I need, oh, right here. It's like, where did I put that teeny tiny snowflake? and that is gonna go right in there. And then that piece is done. Now for the final tag, I wanna make sure that it's completely dry. You're gonna take your reindeer first and line up the bottom and the edge. And press down. Then get his snout. And line that up with the bottom and the edges. Press down. Then his antlers, this little tiny one, the flat end lines up with the edge of your tag. So I just see where the flat end is and the flat end of the tag, and I line those up, figure out where it touches his head, and then press down. And then the larger antler, I just try to make it go somewhat at the same angle and about as far away from the other ear, that little gap, and press down. And then as far as his nose, I just put the top of it with the top of that line, and then make sure it's in the middle and press down. There's also a red ring that goes here, and I lost mine. So you would then line up your ring with that. I'm gonna have to go and find where I put it. So I'm gonna show you how to make your tassel. So the tassel came with 3 sizes of twine. These snowflakes is just a banner. So there is a 3-foot piece of twine, and all you're gonna do is thread it through each one, and then you can tie that around one of your tiers. So the twine with the tag, there's going to be a short piece, a medium piece, and a really long piece. This is all folded up. So for right now, you want the shortest piece and the longest piece. I'm gonna set my tag aside. So I'm gonna set my shortest piece aside, and I'm going to find the end of my longest piece. So I spread my fingers this way. This is going to be making your tassel. So I have pretty small hands, and so I want my tassel to be a little bit longer than my hands closed. So I'm going to spread my hands. Take the end of your string and kind of extend it a little bit past your pinky. Hold that with your thumb, and then start wrapping the twine around until you get to the end. And then pull your hand out so that you should have a loop. And then I try to get the 2 end pieces somewhat even. If yours ends up like up here, then I would just leave it out, if that makes sense. But mine actually ended up kind of even. It changes every time depending on how it's wrapped. Then you're going to, since you have this closed loop on the side that's away from these ends, you're just going to make a little hole. So it's probably 3/4, 2/3 of the way up. Try to keep that hole somewhat open. I moved my string. Take your twine, the smallest piece, keep a tail out because you need a little bit to be able to tie at the end, and then wrap it around that top just a couple times, and then tie it in a really tight knot. If your eye gets bunched up, if the hole gets bunched up and closed, then take a pencil or something similar and thread it through each piece of twine. Make sure that you don't miss any. And that will open it up so that you have like an eye to guide some things through. Okay, now take the remaining piece of twine and thread it through that eye and tie that into a knot. I'm gonna do all the cutting last. So this is approximately what it should look like at this point. You're gonna need 2 more small pieces of Scotch tape. It will make your life way easier. So I'm gonna take this leftover tail from that knot I just made, and I am going to tape it to itself, basically. This is going to prevent it from fraying when you put your beads on. That was put on horribly. So we'll see if my beads will slide down it. And then 1 more small piece. If you don't do this, then you can still thread it through, but your twine will probably fray and it will drive you crazy. Okay, so grab my beads. Okay, I'm just going to start threading. I did white and then one of these candy canes. Oops, white. That was from, I had already made a tassel, but I needed to do the tutorial, so I had to take it apart. So I just did a little pattern. You can put them in however you want. And then I'm gonna slide them over that twine that I just taped to itself. Now, to attach to your tag, obviously yours will have that red mark. You're going to string this underneath that hole and slide it all the way up to your beads. You're gonna wanna gently but firmly make sure that all the beads are as far to the end of the tassel as possible. If you tie it in a knot and you have all this space, your beads are going to have that space in the twine, and you don't want that. So press it all the way to the back of your tassel. Then you're going to take this end and thread it behind. So I'm gonna make a gap. Yours will not have a gap, but I wanna show you. This end is going to go behind this piece of twine and in between the tag and the beads, and it's going to create a loop, and you're going to thread it through that loop. So I'm actually going to tie in mine back up, and then you're going to pull it tight. Then you're gonna repeat that process to create the knot. Take the end, go behind the twine and the beads, make sure that it's in between the tag and that first bead, make that loop, pull it through the loop, and tighten. And then I usually take this piece and I string it up through the first 1 to 2 beads. It just kind of gives it a little bit more stability, and it gives me peace of mind that if I cut it right by the knot, it's not going to unravel. And my tape might say you get 2 beads and that's it. It's starting to come off. I did not put it on very well. Another good use for these pointy tweezers. Ooh, maybe not, maybe this one is stuck. Because then I can pull it up. There we go. And that tape was done. And so then make sure that you do not cut the twine that's holding the beads. Only cut this twine. And I'm just going to cut it close to that bead. And then for your tassel, you're just going to cut the ends so that they are now loose. And I like to kind of brush them all out so I can see that it's kind of differing lengths. And I just like to make them slightly more even. They don't have to be perfect. It is just a cute little rustic sign. And then I'm gonna also trim this piece since it's sticking straight up. Don't trim it too close to the knot so that it comes undone, but just enough so that it disguises more. And that is your tag. If you have any questions, you need a closer up or a different viewpoint of any piece, please reach out to me. I am more than happy to do more detailed step-by-step instructions if you could benefit from it.